Assalamu alaikum, I'm Aisha and you're watching Samaa News. Here are today's headlines. Unrest in Iran has killed more than 500 people as tensions escalate between Tehran and Washington. US-based rights group Hana says it has verified the deaths of 490 protesters and 48 security personnel during 2 weeks of nationwide demonstrations, with more than 10,000 arrests. However, Iran has not released an official toll. The demonstrations have evolved into the biggest challenge to Iran's rulers in years. But analysts believe the protests are unlikely to topple the establishment, even if they leave it significantly weakened. Iran has warned the United States that it will retaliate against any attack. Iran's parliament speaker, Mohammad Bakr Kalibaf, said Tehran would strike back against Israel and US military bases in the region if Washington launches any military action. The warning comes as Israel remains on high alert amid concerns of a possible US intervention linked to ongoing nationwide protests in Iran. Israel has been placed on high alert amid concerns over a possible US intervention in Iran. According to Israeli sources, the alert comes as Iranian authorities face their largest anti-government protests in years. US President Donald Trump has repeatedly warned Iran's leadership against using force on demonstrators and said the United States stands ready to help. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has spoken by phone with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, according to a US official. Axios reports the call focused on Gaza, developments in Syria, and the ongoing protests in Iran. Iranian women rallied in London in support of anti-government protests gripping Iran. Around 100 people gathered near Downing Street, with a larger crowd protesting outside the Iranian embassy. However, Turkish police blocked Iranians in Istanbul from taking out a similar rally outside Iran's consulate. Authorities said the demonstration was banned, forcing the group to relocate to a nearby coffee shop to read a statement and chant slogans backing exiled royal Reza Pahlavi. Police later dispersed the group as tensions flared, with protesters urging Turkey to support Iranians facing deadly crackdowns. US President Donald Trump has directed Special Forces commanders to draw up a plan for a possible invasion of Greenland as part of a renewed push to acquire the strategic Arctic territory before China or Russia does. The request reportedly involves the Pentagon's Joint Special Operations Command, but senior US military leaders are resisting, saying such action would be illegal and lack congressional support. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio is preparing to meet Danish officials to discuss Greenland, with Washington signaling it could pursue purchase or diplomatic options, even as military planning continues. Separately, President Trump has warned Cuba that it will no longer receive oil or money, urging the island nation to strike a deal with Washington before it is too late. Trump posted the ultimatum on his Truth Social platform, saying Cuba previously relied heavily on Venezuelan support. US intelligence assessments describe Cuba's economic and political situation as grim, but offer no clear backing for Trump's prediction that the government is on the brink of collapse. Meanwhile, the Cuban leadership pushed back against President Trump's warning, with President Miguel Diaz-Canel and Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez issuing statements on social media defending Cuba's sovereignty and its right to import fuel. Diaz-Canel said the United States had no moral authority to dictate terms, calling Cuba a free and independent nation prepared to defend itself. On the other hand, Rodriguez said Cuba has the right to buy oil from any supplier willing to sell it. Dar Global and the Trump Organization have announced plans for major luxury developments in Saudi Arabia. Dar Global's chief executive, Ziad El-Char, said the company will launch 2 Trump-branded projects in Riyadh and Jeddah, with a combined value of $10 billion. In Riyadh, the developments will include a Trump National Golf Course and a Trump International Hotel in Diriyah, a large-scale project on the western edge of the capital. In Jeddah, plans include mixed-use office and residential properties under the name Trump Plaza. Germany's finance minister says international law applies to all countries, including the United States. The finance minister and vice-chancellor Lars Klingbeil was responding to US President Donald Trump's comments about seizing Greenland. Klingbeil said decisions about Greenland's future rest solely with Denmark and Greenland, stressing that territorial sovereignty and integrity must be respected. He made the remarks ahead of his departure to Washington for a meeting of finance ministers from the Group of 7 economies. Protests have spread across the United States after an immigration and customs enforcement agent fatally shot a 37-year-old woman in Minneapolis during a federal immigration operation. Tens of thousands marched through Minneapolis, with rallies planned in dozens of cities under banners calling for justice and an end to ICE's presence. Demonstrators chanted slogans against the law enforcement agency as local leaders sharply disputed the federal narrative of self-defense and demanded accountability. Israeli fire has reportedly killed at least 3 Palestinians in separate incidents across Gaza. According to local health authorities, a man was killed in Gaza City's Tufa neighborhood, while 2 others died in Bani Suhaila, east of Khan Yunis, an area still occupied by Israeli forces. The Israeli military has not commented on the shooting. Fighting has eased since an October ceasefire, but Hamas says ongoing killings threaten to derail the truce. The final Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces fighters have withdrawn from the city of Aleppo under a ceasefire agreement, ending a Kurdish military presence in parts of the city held since Syria's war erupted in 2011. SDF commander Mazloum Abdi said the withdrawal followed an internationally mediated deal that secured a ceasefire and the evacuation of civilians and fighters from the Ashrafiyah and Sheikh Maqsood neighborhoods to northern and eastern Syria. That's all for now. For more updates, visit www.samaa.tv. Thank you for watching Samaa News.